You can make exceptions to organization-wide defaults using public groups, sharing rules, manual sharing, and role hierarchy. A public group can be a collection of users, roles and subordinates, and other public groups. Public group can be used in a sharing rule, or it can be used to share a folder. Sharing rules are used to open up access to records and will never be more strict than organization-wide defaults. There are two types of sharing rules that you can build: ownership-based and criteria-based. You can use ownership-based sharing rule in a scenario where records that are owned by a group of users have to be shared with another group. You can use criteria-based sharing rule in a scenario where position records whose status is closed fill should be shared with a particular group. Let me go back to the earlier scenario where user 3 and 4 should be allowed to see all the records owned by users 1 and 2. We can go ahead and create two groups, Group A with user 1 and 2, and Group B with users 3 and 4. And then create a sharing rule saying that all the records owned by Group A should be visible for Group B. Let's create a group first. From Setup, Manage Users, Groups, I'll go ahead and create a new group, call it Group A, and I'll add user 1 and user 2 to that group. Let's create the second group, call it Group B, and I'll add users 3 and 4 to that group. To create a sharing rule, from the administration setup, security controls, sharing settings, just below the organization by defaults, you can create sharing rules on standard and custom objects. Let me create a new sharing rule on the position object. Call it sharing rule 1. Records owned by members of Group A should be shared with Group B. This sharing rule is based on ownership. Now, I would like to create a sharing rule to share all the records owned by members of Group A with Group B, and they get read-level access. You can also do a sharing rule based on criteria, like records that meet a particular criteria have to be shared with certain group of users. I would like to make a small note here. Sharing rules can be created by administrators only. Now, let's talk about manual sharing. Manual sharing allows users to grant one-off access to their individual records for users, roles, and public groups. For example, I can quickly share any record that I own by clicking the sharing button. I can share the record with a user, group, roles, or roles and subordinates, and specify the access level, whether it's read-only or read-write, and say, users who can manually share records are record owners, administrators, or any user above the role of the record owner's role. I'll help you understand this better when I talk about roles in hierarchy. Let's talk about a scenario. Within an organization, you have a couple of sales reps who report to the sales manager, and you have service reps who report to the services manager, and both these managers report to the VP, and the VP in turn reports to the CEO. In the scenario, all records that are accessible by the sales reps need to be visible to the manager, and the VP, and the CEO. Similarly, all the records that are accessible by the manager need to be accessible for the VP and the CEO. To make all this sharing possible, you would have to probably create so many sharing rules, making it complex and hard to maintain. Or you can define roles and hierarchy. Once you define roles and hierarchy within Salesforce, all the records that are accessible by the sales reps can also be accessed by the sales manager, VP, and the CEO. If the sales rep has ownership level of access to record, then the manager, VP, and the CEO also inherit ownership level of access to that record. Role and subordinates of the manager services implies it would be the manager services and all the users below in the hierarchy. Role and subordinates of the VP implies it would be the VP and all users below in the hierarchy. Let's create roles and define hierarchy. To set up roles, search for roles. There's a predefined role hierarchy. Just as an example, you can delete all these and create new roles to suit your business process. You can quickly assign a user to a role. Let me assign the user, Anthony, to the CEO role. Based on your requirement, you can assign users to different roles and define hierarchy. So, roles let you control the visibility of records within the org. A user can be associated with only one role. You can create a maximum of 500 roles in an org. Roles and hierarchy doesn't have to be your company's organizational chart. The objective to using roles and hierarchy is to make sharing records easier. Users usually inherit the privileges of data owned by users below them in the hierarchy. However, if you would like to turn it off, you can by going to your sharing settings and turning off grant using hierarchies. It can only be done for custom objects. To summarize, you can control what objects can a user see using profiles and permission sets, what fields can a user see using field-level security, what records should be hidden by default using organization-wide defaults, and if there are any exceptions that need to be made, we can use sharing rules, manual sharing, and role hierarchy.